my cousin just touched on a subject that is very much important when it comes to access to education, where people with albinism, they basically don't have access to education. I think we let me go back to what you were saying in terms of the internal. If you don't have the internal support, which is basically your family or anyone maybe that is your guardian, we have this, I don't know, I'm gonna call it a disease when it comes to internal, where especially parents, where they hide their children just because they have albinism. They don't send them to school, you know, and all of that. And I mean, honestly speaking, how do you expect that person to lead their life when they're actually growing up? That is so cruel.
Wait,
you know what? You know what?
Did you just say they hide their kids?
Yes, yes. That's one of the sicknesses that I've ever seen. You know, with people hiding their children just because they have albinism.
All
So
right,
that's why we're saying the Yell for Change is a very good platform to actually say, hey, we here in the space. We've actually, you know, so we need people to have the right to education. We need PWAs to have right to education. We need PWAs to have right to employment. You get what I'm saying? So he just touched on a very sensitive subject in South Africa, where I think he just alluded to say that it's a challenge, you know, when it comes to education. As much as youngsters now are sort of like coming up, you know, occupying the space, you know, of education, but it's still not enough. I mean, it's still not enough. We need equality amongst everybody. We need equality amongst everybody.
My blood boil.
Yes.
Man, that make me just feel like, now this is a message I want to send out to every parent in under the sun of my voice. Listen up, yo. Never be ashamed of your child. Don't ever be ashamed. If that child was born with Down syndrome, would you deprive that child from education? Ask yourself this question. If that child was to be born with like a disorder, would you deprive that child? Would you be ashamed of that child? Why should you be ashamed of a child because of a lack of melanin in the skin, hair, and eyes? Why should you be ashamed of something that you are potential carriers of? Why ridicule that child from something that every human being has the right to? Never be ashamed of don't be ashamed of your child. God, you know how much people love to have children? And they would love to have the opportunity to educate their children. This needs to stop. Honestly, this needs to stop. This needs to stop. Anybody else who want to take part in the plan? Yeah, so how does the nystagmus affect you?
Oh my goodness, just the focus. And it's like I'm looking for something, I can't see it, I get frustrated, and then finally I come up on it, and it's like, I don't want nobody to really know that I can't really see, but they know I can't see. It's frustrating. It's really frustrating, especially when I'm in the store with somebody, my mom, my friends, or whoever, and somebody walk off and I'm looking for them and I can't find them, and I'm like, oh my God. Wow. So it's a mess. It's a mess. But I mean, I've made it this far. I'll continue making it.
That's inspiring for me, because I have nystagmus too, and my one affects me when I'm either not focused or if I'm tired. Sometimes even stressed out too. My eyes, I would always say my eyes have its mood swings. That's my way of describing it.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah, that's my way of describing it, because my eyes will be okay today. Then when it's a bad day, I'm like, moves that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to use that. My eyes have mood swings. Yeah, definitely.
It has mood swings. My eyes have mood swings. Okay, it has its days, good and bad. Okay, so, and I think it's important that we need to expose this, expose it, because it's not healthy to suffer in silence. It's not healthy.
Yeah, when it comes to mental health, a lot of people with albinism do suffer in silence. I think it starts from a young age, when
Yeah.
reasonable accommodation is not
Mm-hmm.
provided. Some parents, like I said, are not aware of the condition of their children. They're not aware that their children don't have a weak eyesight. Because I did see some people with albinism posting that, oh, when did your parents realize that you have a weak eyesight? When did you? My parents knew from like my mom knew, yeah, like from birth, like my mom knew exactly how to take care of us as soon as she gave birth to us. She knew, she gave birth to us, she knew, because when there was another child with albinism in the family, they came to my mom for advice and guidance, and my mom was more than happy to assist.
Mom is an expert.
So mom is an expert. Mom knows exactly what to do. So yeah.
Yes. Mama goes back to the credit goes to Mama again. Mama
Of
gets
course,
the credit.
Mama gets the credit all the
So,
time.
so for me, like, I mean, because of the whole, and even with the whole killings and violence. So we talk about it's done. I have to touch on the mental health because can you imagine you lose an arm or you lose a leg or you lose a body part. That must dawn on somebody's mental health, man. The trauma of it. And they say the aftermath is more
The trauma.
traumatic than the actual event.
Not only the killings and the discrimination is traumatic, the humiliation is traumatic.
Yes.
Sometimes people, as well as not only as a child but also in the workplace, people with albinism are suffering, because companies are not aware that this is a person with albinism, this is a person with disability, and they must be catered for, which is why something we call sensitized. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Sensitization.
Sensitization.
Sanitization. Yes,
Yeah.
sanitization. It must be there in the companies because our government gives credit to companies that hire people with disabilities. So if a company hires people with disabilities, then they are less likely to pay a lot of tax,
Since Kayden was a baby, I made it a point to let her know that she was African American and we were her parents and that she's beautiful and she's no different from anyone else. Because in America, there's so many people right now, younger kids that are being bullied or teased and they're committing suicide or anything like that. I did not want that to be an issue for my daughter. So I made sure she knew since day one, you're beautiful, you're special, you're important. Like albinism is no different from anything else. And just like her and her friends have gotten into arguments, she knows that she is African American and her parents are Black and she's Black. So Absolutely. To me, I mean, I can't raise awareness for everyone, but in my household, as long as my child knows, that is the most important thing. And even when I had her, my son was turning 8 and I was talking to her dad something about her being albino, and my son didn't know what it was. He thought we were calling her a bad name, and he was like, "Don't talk about my sister that way." And when we explained to him what it was, he understood that. Mm-hmm. So even though my family knew, I've only had to explain it to my kids, but she's not treated any differently than anyone else.
Yeah.
I just wanted to sort of springboard off of something that was said in the chat just a moment ago, and it's something that I'm definitely in agreement with. For me, persons with albinism should decide by themselves if they have a disability or not. I'm on the fence about that, and I'm going to be very honest with my reasoning why. Disability has a lot of connotations to it, and it's because of that word that we're seen as liabilities, that we're seen as burdens, that we have a lot of that sort of negative sort of energy that's attached to us. And the bad part of the other side of the fence when it comes to what I'm thinking about here is, unfortunately, with us, with people with albinism, we are born legally blind. There's no deciding that. Biologically, there's no deciding that. There just isn't. Whether or not it's a disability, some people might debate. Legally here in where I live in the US, it is there's a certain threshold to where it is a disability. I myself acknowledge that it limits things that I do, but I don't let it stop me.
Yeah.
No, I don't let it stop me. I don't. I realize where my limits are. I just don't let it stop me. I realize that there are things that I'm not going to be able to do.
Yeah.
And I have to make peace with that. It's my responsibility to make peace with what things that I cannot do. And I can't then overcompensate and say, hey, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, when I really can't.
Yeah.
And the most bitter pill to swallow. It really is. But if we really want to be happy, if we really want to live quality lives, there's certain bitter truths that we're going to have to acknowledge.
Very true.
In that our
That's
legal
so true.
Does limit us in doing many things. But does it have to limit us? Does it have to limit us in our entire lives? And can we overcome it? Yeah, we can.
Yeah. Yes. Why Miss Albinism? What led you to this competition? Explain to the audience why Mr. and Miss Albinism.
Mostly for me, it's about impacting the next generation of people with albinism. But most importantly, it's about awareness, to draw awareness into albinism and into us teaching the communities that albinism is just lack of melanin. And we want to, for the next child with albinism, to understand that the sky is not even the limit. You can do whatever it is that you put your mind into, and to have an impact, so that the next generation of people with albinism, they do not have to grow up around the myths on albinism. So it's a platform where we get to say, this is who we are, this is what we're about, and we just dismantle all the myths around albinism. So most importantly, that is what it is about, and we want to show the beauty. And we want to also show that, we want people to understand that albinism is just lack of melanin, and we want the communities to really be able to also explain by themselves by now what albinism is. Because now the thing is that with albinism, people know the myths mostly. You understand? I think what has been out there is the myths. So now we are here to delete the myths, so that when I have a child with albinism, they do not grow up in a society that knows albinism with the myths. They grow up in a society where adversity and diversity is accepted. So that is why I'm a finalist. And when I saw the competition, because it's the first of its kind here in South Africa, I was like, no, this is an opportunity to make an impact in South Africa as a whole, but not just in Eastern Cape, because I live in my province. So this is South Africa. So now I get to represent myself in South Africa. I get to educate in South Africa. So that's why I entered, and so far, so good. A bit nervous, a whole lot of excited. So yeah, that is why I am the finalist for the competition.
Amazing.
Really hated me.
Wow.
And he's tried to hide it for a while. Eventually, he told me he had family members that would spit on the floor when
Wait. Hold on. Wait a minute. Repeat that, please. Did you say spit?
Yes, because the belief is if you see someone with albinism, you will turn. So they believe vitiligo is someone who came across someone who had albinism, and this thing was, I don't know, contagious, I suppose. So now if you don't want this to pass on to you, when now you start losing melanin, you must spit on the floor. And they would spit whenever I'd come around. And I ended up saying, I don't even know how you and I are going to get married. And these are supposed to be my in-laws when they spit on the floor whenever they come across me. You know what I mean? And, but yeah, we obviously didn't get married, but that wasn't the reason why we broke up. But thankfully, they are not my in-laws.
Thank God you got out of that, sis. They'll probably kill you and I wouldn't be talking to you today.
Yeah.
Sometimes I look at that,
yeah,
what become your ridicule is your biggest blessing. And, thank God that I have my in-laws that love and accepts me as well. And to know that people spit, and spitting is more or less assault on somebody. Is worse than, I would say, it's more or less you hit somebody then, because you're basically passing bacteria.
Yeah.
Oh, that is disgusting. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry that you actually went through that, but I'm glad that it's his loss and it's their loss, because they could have looked beyond the color of your skin and didn't see Boni. They just look at your albinism as something that is that's different. And sometimes, I don't know, where have we become so ignorant and not embracing uniqueness and differentness? And I just think that ignorance is for fools. And at the end of the day, with vitiligo, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because vitiligo is autoimmune. You can't catch it. And so is albinism. Albinism is not contagious. It's not like a cold or a flu where you can say, I'm too. And you'll catch the cold or, it's congenital. Yes.
Oh, you touch me and
and you touch me, my skin's gonna go white. Yes. and then on top of that, you're like, okay, I'm not gonna lie. There were times where I felt that I was diseased and whatnot. I'm not gonna lie. And there were times where, and there's some people, like, not all my family members, but some of them, they kind of ridiculed me. But I had some good people from my countries that embraced me and loved me beyond albinism and so forth. And I've got some amazing people up till now that's supporting me with my journey with Yell for Change and my project, and also with albinism, and to know I've never experienced the spitting, but I experienced the walking on the side of the road thing. No one don't want to walk next to me, or some family members, when they have wedding functions, they don't want to sit next to me, kind of thing. I've experienced that firsthand, but I didn't understand why they did it. But if I was to confront them now about it, they're probably like, oh, it's no. What you ridiculed me. And when you ridicule somebody, it really hits the self-esteem, sis. It hits the self-esteem because of the rejection, being dehumanized, being ostracized, being prejudiced, stereotypes, and being stigmatized. And when it does affect you socially to form relationships having albinism, because I know there's a lot of PWAs right now are struggling to really to bond with someone because of the stigma that comes around it.
Yeah.
And obviously it does take a toll on the mental health aspects of things. So one of the things with Yell for Change is about exposing the mental health aspects of having albinism due to the stigma and due to the actual dehumanizing of PWAs. And I want to ask you, now is the time to ask you about your book, your first book. What inspired you to write your book? And
in the video that I released in like 2017, I started talking about writing my book. And I started writing it because I noticed that there was a lot of other persons with albinism in my community, and they were struggling a lot. And I can't sit there and hold each person's hand and guide them through life. So I figured if I make a book and distribute that book amongst the people that I know, then I can, guide them through life a lot more efficiently. I don't have to be there. They could just read the book and know what I know, and then potentially pass on the knowledge to another person that they know. And it worked out pretty good. In the first year, I sold 400 copies on Amazon.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. You know what? Even if you sell one copy to a 400 copy, you're making a difference. And thank you for sharing that with me on Albinism Talk, because you know something that not many people, even not just in the albinism community, to write a book, it takes a lot of work and commitment and discipline. So for you to share that with me today, I want to say thank you for that. Another question about you and life with albinism. So as a part of Yell for Change advocacy, I would like to ask about other people with albinism, their accomplishments, their advocacy cause, quote unquote. So why life with albinism? How did that started?
Okay, so I started life with albinism one day, and this was back in 2018. So this is way before COVID, way before all of that, like way before the podcast hype began. I just realized that so many people had so many questions about albinism. Like every day, every time I walk outside, somebody asks me a question about my albinism. Well, not every day, but a lot of the times. And I realized that people just had so many questions that they had about albinism. And I said to myself, wouldn't it be great if I just started a podcast that could potentially answer everybody's questions about albinism and just talk about life with albinism, how life is affected by albinism. And then I said to myself, I know so many different people with albinism. Living here in New York, there's plenty of people with albinism in New York. So I have a very close friend named Jason who has albinism. I also have a cousin who has albinism named Avery. And those are the two people that I'm most closest to, not just in life, but with albinism as well. So I immediately called the two of them and I just said, hey, man, I got this idea for this podcast. Let's call it Life with Albinism. Let's talk about different topics that affect our life with albinism. Every episode will be a different topic. And let's call other people that we know with albinism and have them come and share their story and share their insight. And that's just how it started. And I said, we're going to do the first episode with just the three of us, the three original hosts. And then every episode after that, we're going to interview someone else with albinism. And we're never going to run out of guests to interview because there's so many people with albinism and they know people who know people, so on and so forth. So ever since then, we just kept reaching out to people. Hey, would you like to come join our podcast? 9 times out of 10, they say, yeah, sure. And they would come and they would film. And we've had elderly people. We've had children on our show. We've had women, men, old, young, college students, grade school students, whoever, and we just kept going from there. And then at some point, the podcast started to pick up a lot of attention, and I said, okay, we got to step it up even further. Let's make products. Let's make T-shirts. Let's even go further. Like, let's make this bigger. Let's get a website. Let's get an Instagram. Let's just grow and grow and grow. And our future goal is to just truly become the reason why albinism becomes more integrated into the limelight. And what I mean by that is that when you look at sports, when you look at modeling, when you look at television, when you look at all of these things, you very rarely see someone with albinism. Sure, there's a couple of albino models. Sure, there's a couple of albino actors, but it's not many. Probably less than 5 in each category if we're talking about the mainstream media. So that's also something that I eventually want to help to change. I'm not going to try to take sole ownership over changing that, but I want others to help me. And I just want to push the albinism community forward, and I want to push it more into the limelight so that we can see more people with albinism popping up in the media, popping up online, social media, or whatever the case, and just help integrate it into the limelight and to just truly push, encourage, and educate the albinism community forward. And that's what Life with Albinism is all about.
Oh, wow. Wow. Oh my God. You know what? I don't know if you know this with me. I'm always trying to push out the T-shirts. I'm like, oh my God, support this, from as Yell for Change advocacy. It's no competition with any other advocacy cause where you're one of them. And, it is also my due diligence as the founder of Yell for Change is to support the albinism community, whatever it is, in any way that I can, even if to really promote the T-shirts on Yell for Change's story, and any projects that anybody else with albinism is doing, just to promote their products as much as mine, because we're all in it together. At the end of the day, it's not about competing, it's about we need each other. So without each other, the product or the content won't grow or evolve without support from each other. And that is one of the things that I want the albinism community to understand and to know that we all need to support each other. We can't be divided. So it's to bring out Life with Albinism to launch out, to branch out, because even still, like when I started Yell for Change and I saw Life with Albinism, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a very good product. I want to jump on and support this product. So
yeah, and I greatly appreciate that, because you were one of the first people to ask to buy one of our Life with Albinism T-shirts. And you also have always shared my content on Instagram, on Facebook. You've always spoke highly of my content. You've always helped me to reach more viewers. So I greatly appreciate what you do, because you are truly for the albinism community, because you've been promoting me since I first even came in contact with you. So I greatly appreciate your effort. And that's what it's about, helping each other and building together as a community.
Of course. To that now. So you mentioned you have a child with albinism.
Yeah.
Please explain about what was your experience like as a mother when your child was born with this condition. What was that like for you?
First of all, I can say that I knew about albinism growing up in DRC. So when I came in UK, I was a young mom, and then I was pregnant. When you are pregnant, you never know how your baby gonna look like. Especially when you carry a child with albinism, it's difficult to know that you're gonna have a child with albinism. I know some of the condition now, they can detect and then tell you that your child's gonna look like that, but with albinism, there is no way you can know that you have a child, you are carrying a person or a baby with albinism. So when I give birth in the hospital, the first thing was, oh, where's the dad? The nurse. So when I see my child, I was not shocked. now, because I knew about albinism. So it's just something that you don't know, you just, see the baby and then you just say, oh, as a African, and then have black skin, and then my husband as well. So we've been, expecting to have a child like looking like us. So to have a child who's blonde and, blonde hair and blue eyes, it was a little bit, surprise for everyone. So, and the nurse, so this is what I have, one of the nurses asked, where's the dad? And the dad was just there. So, and so this is what happened. And then my brother and sister, my family was there. And one of my brother asked my sister, he called my sister and asked about my sister, what's going on? Is it Rachel cheats on why the baby's white, why the baby's like that? And then he forgot about albinism, because my child, she had the blue eyes. She was like white. She just was like blonde, beautiful baby. And then my sister told him, do you forget she have a baby? She have albinism. And I forgot about that. So this is how everything starts. And yeah, she was very welcome to the family and everything was fine. But I have a difficult times, to find out how to look after a child with albinism. So it was a little bit difficult for me because there was no organization like today. There was no way to ask. There was some doctor, they was telling me what to do, but I didn't know many things. So I learned every time when she was growing up, and then I learned some of the things like putting a sun cream. I didn't know about that. Mm-hmm. So all these things I learned by, raising her. So I have this experience by raising a child living with albinism.
Wow. Yeah,